Welcome, welcome, welcome to Talking Smack Intellectually. I'm your host, the Upsetter, always upsetting the status quo. I'm really excited about the show. I know I say that a lot, but we've been having some pretty impressive guests. As we wrap up the Women's History Month series, we were joined by amazing women, and I have another amazing woman to introduce you guys to today. We're going to pay homage to Dr. K. Renee Horton. She's a pioneering NASA engineer, and she's a really big, important person in the world of STEM. Dr. Horton, the trailblazer who holds the distinction of being the first Black person to attain a PhD in material science and engineering at the University of Alabama. That is really impressive. Salute to her. She has left an indelible mark on aerospace engineering. Not only is she a recipient of the prestigious Webby Award, she's also the visionary behind the Unapologetically Being Inc. It is an organization dedicated to promoting diversity and mentorship in STEM domains. This is a good one. So sit back and relax as we delve into the depths of intellect, exploration, and guys, I inquired, do aliens really exist? I had to go there. And also, Dr. Horton shares with us her plans for this upcoming solar eclipse. Can you talk a little bit about how you actually got started and became inspired to pursue a career in STEM, and maybe some of the obstacles you may have faced in your life earlier on?
I got a telescope at 9, and I always say that that's kind of what triggered it, but I think I need to go back because growing up, my grandparents, they actually had, we lived in family homes. And so we had a backyard in both of my grandparents' houses and my parents' house. There was a backyard. And at my grandmother and my mother's mother, she grew flowers and she had flowers everywhere. So literally I was learning like the cycle of life there. And I was the only of her grandchildren interested in that. But I was catching the caterpillars and watching them, transform and watching the moths transform and, the bees and the pollination and just the garden. And I was always into that as being small. And then at my other grandmother's house, my dad, there was a train track in back. And we used to hop the fence to put the pennies and quarters on there to have them squashed. And we actually learned displacement like that. Like if you put it a certain place or if you put something under it. And we did all of that experimentation. Wow. Not even knowing that is experimentation growing up, but that was a really, big thing.
Right.
So there were 2 moments in my life that were really pivotal for me that this is something I knew that I wanted to do. My dad's brother was in the Air Force and he built his own television, floor model television. And he was the one who did all the soldering, all the tube, everything for that television. And it was like one of those revelations, like, yo, that's the blood that's in me.
You said about 9 years old, correct?
So 9 is when I got the telescope. Okay. And 9 is when I was on that journey. My brother went with me up the side of the house, like we crawled up one of those antennas and we got on the top of the roof. And I remember it so clearly because it was the first time like I was seeing the moon's features.
Right.
And it was like, yo, there's something more than us here. Like there's something bigger than us. And I wanted to be a part of that was exploring the bigger than us.
Right. And speaking of the bigger than us, are there aliens? Do aliens really exist?
I am very much rooted in my spiritual belief and my beliefs. And I always have people think about it like this. If you believe that there's God or if there's something bigger than us, or even if you believe in the universe, you cannot think that we as humans are it or he made us and thought we were perfect because we are dumb.
Right.
Humans.
Right.
Like we don't even get it right. We just love our neighbors. So there is no way a God that I serve that I think has so much control and destiny in my life would actually say, I done made y'all and that's it.
Right. Right.
I believe that there is something there. I believe that there's so much more than us, but I also believe that there are parallel universes. I don't think that the Big Bang happened here and it stopped.
Right.
I think that there are other places and other dimensions as well. And for that to exist means that there is something else that exists in that as well.
Right. And are you the only person in your immediate family or maybe your extended immediate family that's interested in STEM or took a career in STEM?
No. My aunt on my dad's side is heavy into STEM. She retired from Ball Aerospace. She also worked with Intel. I've got an uncle who's a pharmacist. I've got a younger cousin who's a pharmacist as well. And then on the other side, I've got a cousin that's an architect, and I've got another cousin that works as a chemist in a plant.
Right. Okay, so this is
I'm the only one who was crazy enough to go in the government, though.
Gotcha. Okay. So your role at NASA, you're a space launch system quality engineer. That's a pretty vital role for upcoming missions. Can you tell us about a particularly rewarding experience that you worked on or a project that you worked on at NASA?
So the job that you just announced as the quality engineer, that's actually my former role.
Okay.
I was promoted about 2 years ago. So yeah, actually I just hit my 2-year mark.
Congratulations.
So I was promoted 2 years ago. Yeah. Well, actually it's coming up. So just a couple, like 2 weeks shy of my 2-week mark, but I was promoted to the airworthiness deputy for the electrified powertrain flight demonstrator project, which is a hybrid electric airplane project. So that's what I'm currently working on. But I'm going to go back to your other question, which is tell you about a particular rewarding experience. So when I was 17, I was diagnosed with a late stage hearing loss, and it did not qualify me to be in the Air Force or to be an astronaut. And so at 9, when I was like, I'm going to work for NASA, I want to be an astronaut, right? That dream ended for me just 8 years later and not being able to do that. And I ended up getting pregnant, dropping out of school, getting married, following my husband's career, and then we separated 7 years later. When I had my daughter, I was like, there's something in me that probably needs to make this world better and different for her, right? And I went back to school. At that time, I went back to school with the 3 kids, got my undergraduate, and then went on to get my PhD. Well, NASA called me. I had fellowships at NASA, and 8 months after graduation, NASA called me back to work with them. One of the most rewarding experiences was that we welded. I started welding for my dissertation, and we were welding for the first time in Huntsville in 30 years that NASA was actually producing hardware, not someone else producing it, but NASA actually producing it. Well, being on that project, they allowed us to put our names on that project. And it launched Artemis. It launched the Orion capsule, which we now launch on Artemis. And when it was launched, it was like, that was my pivotal full circle moment for me. Because I went into space at that moment. And it was one of those realizations that the things that I am now working on will go into space. Even though I am no longer part of the project, my dissertation is what is used on that project.
That is something really major
to be proud of. There's a piece of me that gets to go into space. So for me, that to date has been probably one of the most rewarding experiences.
And that's something to be extremely proud of, and congratulations to that. Also, I mean, you're the first Black person to receive your PhD in material science and engineering at University of Alabama. Obviously, your achievements have paved the way for sure for diversity and inclusion in the STEM fields. Can you talk a little bit about how do we get more African Americans or Black Americans in the STEM field?
Supporting these kids when they're younger or early on and actually making it seem cool. I remember my daughter coming to me and saying she did not want to be a scientist. She didn't want to have nothing to do with NASA, no science, no nothing. And I was like, why? She was like, because your clothes are boring. You show up, you look like the guys. And I listened to her and I was like, that's crazy that is what she can see. She doesn't see that we're doing something great and profound. What they're seeing is we don't really fit into that space. And so when I think of being the first in 2011, the first, it was a little crazy for me. Well, this is now 2024, and there's still not another in that particular department, in that particular field, right? I truly like the focus on making STEM diverse is important to me because I want these young kids to be able to bring their dreams and their talent to this field. It's going to be the diversity that helps save some of the things that are, sometimes happening.
Right.
And without having that type of diversity in the field, you get one-way thinking.
Right.
And if you keep with one-way thinking, you get the same type of results. And those results will never solve what we need to solve if they haven't already done it.
For sure. You also have a nonprofit organization, unapologetically being...
Correct.
Okay. And so with that program, you mentor and support underrepresented voices in STEM. Can you share some memorable moments where you felt your efforts truly made a difference within the organization and your mentorship, and tell us how important it is, mentoringship?
Gosh, I can think of a couple. Man, I had a young lady when I was teaching at the University of Alabama before I ever started the mentorship program. She wanted to be a physician assistant and she had failed the test and she wasn't doing well in physics and chemistry, but she was determined to be a physician assistant. And her and I worked together and I got to mentor her just about like controlling your emotions, an emotional intelligent piece and how to go back at something. If you don't get it the first time, that don't mean you can't get it. You just got to go back at it. And now she's flourishing like in that field and she loves it. And it's like moments like that that make me go, okay, this was the right deal. After establishing the nonprofit, my very first two that came out, one is at one of the government agencies and she's flourishing, like a top level manager level. And then another one just ran for her not congressman, like public office in the area that she's in. And she's a professor and teaches at Georgia Tech. And so when I'm looking at them and I'm looking at these spaces that they're making these impacts in, it makes me feel really good. The books that I have I always talk about the nonprofit, and then the books which fall under the nonprofit is about changing the face of STEM. And so when I'm looking at it, not only am I helping Black and brown kids and adults end up in those spaces, I'm also teaching the others that don't look like us about being advocates and also giving them a safe space to learn how they can be better people.
And what significant space event do you think inspired you the most in history?
Actually, it was the loss of Shuttle. I remember sitting in the room and I remember like, if I'm ever in the position to make sure that those people could come home, they're going to come home. And for me, I stand on quality. I stand on safety at the work. I'm not always the popular opinion at work either, but I stand on that because I remember being so moved that someone had just lost their mom and dad, their brothers and sisters. And I was really moved by that. And so for me, I think that's probably one of the most impactful. And then the other one that bothers me the most is the demotion of Pluto. Pluto was ours growing up. And then all of a sudden, these kids are like, I said, Pluto's my favorite planet. And they're like, it ain't even no planet, Dr. H. And I'm like, whatever. But I think that kind of bothered me. Like when we think about who gets to dictate how we define things, right? And so those like it wasn't just a demotion of Pluto. It really was about, like how are these people defining things and how do they, decide that this is going to be the thing we change today or tomorrow. Right. And I realized like I want to be able to be a part of that type of impactful science in there. I think those are my two big ones.
How are some ways that you balance, as you advocate for diversity in STEM? It's a demanding career, I'm pretty sure. And so how do you balance that? How do you find your zen? How do you make sure that you're entering into finding peace and tranquility in your life and balance a nice work and health balance?
So I'm going to start with my very first is my village. I've got a core group of women that are some of them are in STEM. So 1, 2, 3 are in STEM. 1, 2, 3 are in STEM. One is a journalist who also has high demanding, and another one is a pharmacist. All of us have very high demanding jobs and careers. And I don't have to explain to them when I'm feeling something or something has happened. So that part of taking that burden off of having those kind of people in your life, changes that. But we are also very good about, nobody's judgmental. Like nobody's judging me about, like, can I get on your calendar? Or can, Renee, can you make some time for us? Right. I'm very good at balancing with my family. Like I landed, came home, and I get 4 days with my family. And I revel in those 4 days. Tomorrow we're doing a crawfish boil, and an Easter egg hunt right here at my house. And my dad helped me, prep the Easter eggs and, that kind of stuff and get my pre-order. But my time with family and friends is mega important to me. Like that is part of my zen. And even though being with family can be stressful, I also indulge in the things that make me happy. When I was in graduate school, I had devised a list, a happiness list, and I tell people I recommend people do it all the time. But on that list were things that made me happy, like child happy, right? Before we start worrying about bills and responsibilities like that, right? And I indulge in those activities. The swing makes me happy. I have a swing on my back porch. I have a swing in on the ground too, like in the yard, right? An adult swing, not a child swing, an adult swing. But we have 3 different types of swings here at this house. I used to look for 4-leaf clovers. I don't anymore. Butter pecan ice cream makes me happy. Lush bath bombs and soaking in the jacuzzi makes me happy. And my girlfriend's mom purchases them for me on a regular basis and mails packages to my house.
Right.
With Lush bath bombs. So I have defined those things that make me happy, but also make the inner child in me happy.
Right.
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 And those are the things that I indulge in.
Right. Right. And it's important, I think, for women in particular to take the time for self-care, because sometimes we get so wrapped up in life. I love reading. I love music. I love to like really try to pull away from the every day. So it's refreshing to hear that you have a support group and sisters that are also in your field that know the importance of self-care.
And I'm also really big into into reading. So I do probably 60, 70 audiobooks a year.
Oh, nice. Yes. Nice. I love that. What's your favorite genre to read?
Right now, the Christian fiction has me kind of enthralled. Kind of it just sucked me right in. I'm also in Lent right now. So 47 days of the sacrifice. And probably the last 4 or 5 that I did were Christian literature.
Right.
Because they have a heavy influence on, like, the characters are praying and, what does that prayer life look like? And so during this Lent season, I wanted to focus more on how can I be more of a servant, right? And in doing that, understanding prayer a little bit better. So I was kind of led to those. And then heavy science fiction. So I'm actually writing a science fiction, like, short novel for teenagers. And so just kind of in that genre right now to see kind of where people are going as well.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
This will be, so I've got 3 children's books already on the market. And then there'll be a 4th children's book coming out around October. October is my birthday, so we're going to do everything around October this year. And then the chapter book is a little bit more, it's taking me just a little bit more. So, but the chapter book is probably maybe not until the following year.
I think that getting kids involved or the youth involved at a very young age is amazing. And I salute you for giving back with knowledge. I mean, we can always give back with money and gifts and all these great things, but the one thing that they can't take from you is knowledge. And so I salute you for reaching back to the youth and giving back to the youth. And so, in your opinion, what do you think some of the key challenges we may have to face as women and minorities in general in STEM? And what steps do you think that we can take to address some of these issues effectively?
I think we need to start teaching our people, our kids, our women, our girls, right? How to succeed in an uncomfortable place.
Right.
See, right now, these kids can't, they dealing with all this bullying and all of that. And, and then immediately it's like, this is not a space I want to be in. And the parents swoop in and want to save them, right? The catch is the world is not like that. Right now, ain't nobody come and save you once you're an adult, right? But that's also a skill set you are not learning early on. And I think we should be more honest and transparent with these girls. Like what it is to be in these male-dominated spaces.
Right, right.
So dating has been difficult for me. I always say that. But one of the guys that I've been dating, that I dated, he said to me, he says, man, he was like, you are so rough around the edges when we're at work, right? He was like, you are just so dominant at work and in that space. And then it's like, yeah, but at home, my brothers will tell you at home, she just mush and girl and everything, right? We have to learn how to learn to accept our duality.
Right.
And a lot of times, we want to fight against that. And it's like, I don't do that anymore. Like I'm walking in my duality because you could catch me right outside the door. And it's like, and it's like, I might, you might make me cry because you told me some stuff and now I'm real sensitive. And they like, oh, Lord, this is not Dr. Horton. But I think teaching them how to live in that duality and how to learn to make that duality work for them to begin with.
Right.
Right. When you look at a lot of successful minorities, you're going to see that they are living in that duality.
Mhm.
Like they know how to make the adjustment, how to be uncomfortable, but how to still succeed.
Right. And I think a lot of women in powerful positions or in higher positions, we do hear that a lot. We get criticized a lot when it comes to dating. And it's funny that you mentioned that as one of the challenges because I don't think that a lot of men understand that duality. I think you're oftentimes judged on what they see at work, or you in public spaces, not realizing that, women were not treating these men the same way that we would treat our husbands or longtime partners or boyfriends or whomever. And I do think sometimes men may find it difficult to navigate the duality and or even understand it. So it's interesting that you did bring that up. And that I think that resonates with a lot of women and, powerful positions or higher positions. And so it's interesting that you mentioned that. Given that your dreams of becoming an astronaut was initially challenged by a hearing impairment, what words of encouragement can you share to individuals who may have encountered some unforeseen obstacles while pursuing their aspirations?
I'm going to say if you want it, it's worth fighting for. It is worth the pain. It's worth the tears. The joy that I experience now walking in the career that I felt was destined for me in my life is amazing. That joy, when we talk about, Black girl magic and our Black boy joy, the joy that resonates within my soul, it's not no joy like on the surface. This is joy down in my soul, happiness in my soul. And it's because I chose to endure.
Right.
I'm not going to say it was easy though, because it wasn't. It was hard. And I had to, learn to put those things in places to help give me that kind of safeguard and that kind of protection and also the kind of love that I needed to constantly keep pushing and keep going.
Right.
So I'm going to say, if it's your dream, think outside of the box and make it happen.
Right. And what are your plans for the upcoming solar eclipse on April 8th?
I am headed to Little Rock, Arkansas for the solar eclipse. And I am doing a big talk at the fairgrounds with one organization on Thursday. And then on Friday, I think we're doing a radio interview in the morning. And then Saturday, I am working with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. They have an activity going for the totality. I'm going to do that on Saturday morning in Little Rock. And then Saturday evening, I will be at the Pyramid Bookstore in Little Rock signing books.
Nice.
And then on Monday, I will be watching with all millions standing on the space as it crosses over in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Nice. You are going to be busy. I did want to jump back to unapologetically being and give some time and space for you to talk a little bit about the organization.
Well, thank you. Thank you for going back to that. Yeah, donations are always important. We don't keep the donations for us. We give the donations to the students. So we may have a student who may want to go to a conference, and if sometimes it's paying the flight, or sometimes they just need the money to be able to eat while they're there because not all of that is covered. So we offer those kind of mini travel grants to them when we have that type of funding. We're always looking for volunteers. I have been blessed to be able to have the seat at multiple tables in many venues. And when students think, well, if you did it, I can do it too. You can help me. And I have to explain to them, I can't always understand what you're going through. And I don't know all the ins and outs of these other fields. And so volunteers who are just willing to say, hey, Dr. H, I'm okay with being a part of your network. And if you have a student that is in X field, I would love to be able to talk to them. Or if you're not willing to talk to them, at least let me pull on you to be able to say, hey, can you have a conversation? So a lot of times I just reach out and say, can you have one conversation with this student? That's all I'm asking you. And I, to date, have not been told no. So volunteers and funding to help these students, achieve their dreams are definitely all things that we need with the organization.
And where's the headquarters of the organization?
Our incorporation papers are based out of Denver. Oh. And then I actually function out of New Orleans.
New Orleans? All right. Okay. And my last question is, what would you like your legacy to be? What do you think you would like? What would you like your imprint on future generations to be proud of when they think of Dr. K. Renee Horton?
I want them to say she did that. She changed the face of STEM.